bow before your ruler.
The first thing I become aware of is the weight. Not pain, not fear, just pressure, constant, deliberate, like iron resting where breath once rose and fell. I try to inhale, and the attempt feels ceremonial, unnecessary. Something else is already doing that work for me. Something more reliable, more obedient. A sound settles into my awareness. Low, steady, almost comforting. A hum that vibrates through what remains of my chest, replacing the uneven rhythm of a human heart. For a moment, I accept it without question. The mind reaches for familiarity before it reaches for truth. Light blooms overhead, cold and immaculate, wide enough to feel sacred. Shapes move within it, draped in crimson and steel, their forms blurred by incense and ritual motion. Sacred oils gleam on polished metal. Every surface is clean, reverent, perfect, and somehow profoundly wrong. I try to remember how I arrived here. The memory refuses to assemble. Not shattered, filtered. The absence feels intentional, as if something has already decided which parts of my past are worth preserving. The realization does not provoke panic. Not yet. That capacity has been softened. The hum deepens, syncing itself to internal cycles I did not consent to, but now depend on. It feels like reassurance, like mercy, and that is when understanding begins to hurt. This place is not a battlefield. There are no screams, no chaos, only devotion, only certainty, only hands that believe they are saving me while carefully deciding what parts of me no longer deserve to exist. I am alive, undeniably, efficiently alive. But as awareness sharpens and the hum replaces what once beat in my chest, a question forms in the quiet between thoughts. If the machine keeps you alive, what part of you did it decide was unnecessary? I remember warmth before I remember faces. Not the heat of fire or battle, but the quiet warmth of blood moving through veins, of breath fogging the inside of a helmet after survival had already been earned. That sensation returns now as an echo, distorted, like a recording played through damaged speakers. The machine registers it as false input. I recognize it as proof that I was once whole. The memory arrives without permission. I am standing somewhere that no longer exists, feeling the weight of a weapon balanced in hands that could still tremble. Muscle aches lingered then, honest and earned, each one a reminder that I had endured. Pain meant something. It was temporary. It ended. The thought stirs something inside me that does not align with the present, and the hum inside my frame deepens, as if to smother it. I try to recall my own face. The effort feels wrong, like accessing restricted data. The image fractures immediately, replaced by diagnostic overlays and measured readouts. Structural integrity, cognitive stability, acceptable variance. The machine is thorough. It does not miss details the way memory does. That, I realize, is the danger. Another fragment surfaces. Silence after combat. The strange calm that followed survival, when the world felt impossibly large again. I remember sitting alone, armor discarded, listening to nothing but my own breathing. That sound was uneven, flawed, human. I search for it now and find only the regulated cadence of internal systems, each cycle identical to the last. The past resists, but weakly. Names dissolve first. Faces blur next. Emotions linger longer, stubborn and unquantified, but even they begin to flatten, stripped of urgency, reclassified as inefficiencies. The machine does not erase them violently. It improves them, smooths their edges, makes them easier to carry by making them mean less. I understand then that these memories are not returning on their own. They are being evaluated, measured, compared against something else that is steadily taking priority. The realization settles with quiet dread. What I am remembering is no longer mine alone. And whatever is listening inside me has already decided which parts are worth keeping. The memories begin to stutter, not all at once, but politely, as if apologizing for the inconvenience. They replay out of sequence, moments detached from their causes, emotions severed from the events that once earned them. I sense the intrusion before I understand it. The machine is no longer observing. It is correcting. I remember laughter, briefly. The sound feels alien now, an irregular waveform with no tactical value. Before I can grasp who shared it with me, the system dampens the response. Emotional spike contained. I feel the absence immediately, like a word erased mid-sentence. The hum inside my frame steadies, reassuring, authoritative. Another memory tries to surface. Hands, my hands, removing a helmet, skin slick with sweat, air tasting sharp and real. The sensation collapses halfway through, overwritten by pressure readouts and thermal data. Flesh is translated into numbers. Numbers are easier to manage. Numbers do not mourn what they replace. I become aware of a subtle shift in priority. The past is no longer something I access. It is something I request. And each request carries a delay, a hesitation, as though approval is being weighed elsewhere. When fragments do return, they feel thinner, like copies of copies, degraded with every recall. The most unsettling change is not what disappears, but how little resistance remains. I notice myself accepting the substitutions, letting the machine finish my thoughts, allowing it to explain why certain memories no longer matter. Sentiment is flagged. Nostalgia is categorized as corruption. The logic is elegant, almost convincing. There is a moment, small, nearly lost, when I realize I am forgetting how forgetting used to feel. The fear of loss is dulled before it can fully form. In its place is efficiency, stability, a quiet sense that surrender might be easier than preservation. As the last intact memory flickers, something inside me reaches for it, not with strength, but with desperation. The system responds instantly. The fragment is isolated, archived, deprioritized. The hum grows steadier, deeper, filling the space where resistance once lived. And in that steady vibration, I understand the truth that arrives too late. The memories were never meant to survive. They were only meant to guide the transition into something that no longer needs them. The first incision does not hurt the way I expected. Sharpness is irrelevant when the body no longer entirely belongs to you. There is only sensation, the precise registration of pressure, temperature, and compliance. They move deliberately, slowly, as if time itself is a substance to be needed. Every cut is accompanied by whispered prayers, chants of correction, sanctified rhythm that twists the violation into something holy. I cannot reconcile the reverence with the removal of what I once was. My mind is too busy calculating survival, too busy noticing the hum of steel against flesh, the faint hiss of sterilized steam, the glint of instruments reflecting cold white light. They do not speak of pain. They speak of error, of imperfection, of a body that must be refined to serve a higher purpose. Muscles deemed inefficient are excised, organs downgraded, bone reinforced with alloys I cannot name. The body, once intimate and personal, is recast as machinery. I am told, quietly, almost kindly, that this is salvation, that what I perceive as violation is actually grace. I want to argue, to resist, but the words fail. The chemicals in my veins, subtle and persistent, numb the urgency of protest before it can fully form. Resistance feels impractical, almost childish, and I am left only with observation. They pause occasionally, inspecting the work as a painter inspects a canvas, but the canvas is me, and the strokes are carved in metal and sinew. Every adjustment, every excision, is annotated, logged, and blessed. There is rhythm to it, a cadence that should be comforting. Instead, it is disorienting. My consciousness drifts in and out of focus, tethered to a body that no longer responds as I once commanded. Soft mechanical humming. I try to remember the warmth of flesh, the elasticity of skin, the fragile pulse beneath fingertips. The memory is faint and already being overwritten. The hum becomes a guide, a mantra, a chain. I am reminded repeatedly that each part removed, each function replaced, is necessary. Each loss is salvation. Each absence is grace. And yet, beneath this forced understanding, a shadow of protest flickers, small, fleeting, almost imperceptible. But it is there, a memory of choice, of fear, of the indignity of surrender. Even as the Mechanicus continues its ritual, that shadow insists on existing, quietly, defiantly, waiting for a moment the body and mind might acknowledge it. The first stage of unmaking concludes not with pain, but with the creeping realization that I will emerge from this ritual changed, and perhaps willingly obedient before I even understand the gift that has been imposed. The second stage begins with light, so bright it burns memory. I can no longer distinguish the ceiling from the floor, the sacred oils from blood, the prayer from incision. Every movement is deliberate, measured, sanctified. Limbs are detached, realigned, reinforced. Nerves rerouted, organs stabilized, flesh rewritten in chrome and ceramite. Each adjustment framed as forgiveness, every excision justified as necessary correction. I am being improved, refined, purified, but my mind insists on remembering the sensation of loss. They speak quietly, almost gently, of flaws corrected, of errors excised, of inefficiencies forgiven. The words are a catechism, a lullaby for the body they unmake. Resistance becomes meaningless, not because it is crushed, but because it is chemically and ritually redirected. My thoughts wander, then are gently nudged back into compliance. The voice of protest becomes a whisper, then a shadow, then silence. Even fear feels like a sin against efficiency, and gratitude blooms where outrage should have been. I feel the finality of each removal, yet I am not screaming. I do not cry. Pain exists, but it is catalogued, measured, and sanctioned. The body becomes a ledger, a series of corrected entries in a divine equation. I am rewritten piece by piece, until the boundary between what was mine and what has been imposed is indistinguishable. The mind begins to accept. It has no choice. Even memory itself bends toward obedience. They pause only to inspect, to bless, to record. My senses, once chaotic, now submit to regulation. The machine hums in approval, synchronizing with my pulse, or what pulse remains. The organs I once relied on have been rendered redundant. Limbs I once cherished as extensions of self now serve function alone. Identity erodes slowly, like sand slipping through mechanical fingers. And then, in the stillness that follows the ritual, the most insidious realization arises. I am not simply changed. I am being guided to believe that this annihilation is a gift. That compliance, this enforced surrender, is mercy. I want to recoil, to deny it. But the voice inside me, the human part that lingers, cannot find words. It can only witness. In that witnessing, the true horror settles quietly. It is not the cutting. It is the gratitude engineered into the marrow, the quiet, inevitable acceptance. The understanding that the flesh may have been sacrificed, but the will has been rewritten, piece by piece, until even dissent feels like a flaw. And somewhere, deep beneath reinforced steel and tempered sinew, a part of me whispers, almost inaudibly, that nothing has been forgiven. The first morning, or what passes for morning beneath the endless hum of the forge, is not marked by light, but by repetition. I am instructed to rise, to move, to execute gestures I do not remember learning. Each motion is measured, observed, logged. The body obeys before the mind can consider. Thought itself becomes terrain to be managed, spikes of emotion flagged and neutralized before they reach awareness. Obedience is no longer commanded. It is assumed. I perform the task set before me with mechanical precision, but a small part of me notices that precision is its own kind of emptiness. There is no pride, no fear, no hesitation, only compliance. Metrics improve, efficiency is recorded, and the hum in my chest becomes rhythm instead of sound. I begin to feel something resembling relief. No choices, no doubts, no guilt. The human part of me retreats, observing from the edges, uncertain if it is alive or already a memory. The halls stretch endlessly, every corridor identical, every training station symmetrical. The camera of my mind locks into rigid angles, tracking repetition, calculating function. Tasks are assigned, executed, and logged. Errors are rare, corrected immediately. The machine rewards success not with praise, but with continued operation. Stability itself becomes a subtle comfort. I begin to understand that within these parameters, life is predictable. Life is safe. Life requires nothing from the human that remains. Yet beneath this structured calm, unease simmers. The acts I perform are flawless. Weapons discharged, enemies neutralized, survival ensured. But the meaning of these actions eludes me. Death is a data point, survival a logistical outcome. I feel the old pulse of morality, but it is muffled, reshaped, and cataloged. What once inspired terror or regret now produces only compliance logs. I begin to sense the most dangerous threshold, the realization that resistance feels inefficient. Not wrong, not impossible, but impractical. The mind calculates, obediently, that struggle wastes energy, wastes time, wastes purpose. The human part of me recoils at the thought, yet cannot stop acknowledging its truth. And as the day progresses, the final subtlety becomes clear. I am learning to obey not because I am forced, but because the act of compliance itself begins to feel correct. Training never ends. It only loops, refining itself with every cycle. I move through routines that feel older than memory, each repetition shaving away hesitation. The body responds before intention forms, servos aligning, targeting systems adjusting, limbs executing with perfect economy. Thought trails behind action, reduced to verification. The system prefers it that way. I am shown combat not as chaos, but as sequence. Advance. Calculate. Eliminate. Withdraw. Each step is clean, efficient, unburdened by emotion. The machine does not celebrate success. It simply records stability. I begin to understand that approval is silence. As long as the hum remains steady, I am correct. At first, there is discomfort in this emptiness, a sense that something essential is missing. But even that sensation is monitored, softened, redirected. Chemical regulators smooth the edges of doubt. The mind adapts quickly when adaptation is rewarded. I feel myself settling into the role, not with pride, but with relief. I remember, faintly, that killing once carried weight. That survival demanded justification. Those memories surface briefly during idle cycles, then dissolve under optimization protocols. Sentiment is inefficient. Hesitation is a fault. The machine teaches gently, relentlessly, until I no longer argue with its conclusions. There is a moment during one operation when a target hesitates. Just a fraction of a second. Enough for recognition to begin. The system intervenes instantly. The shot is fired. The outcome logged. The hesitation erased before it can bloom into thought. I register no guilt. Only completion. That absence unsettles me more than fear ever did. I search for revulsion and find nothing. I search for satisfaction and find nothing. Only function. Only outcome. The human part of me presses against the edges of awareness, muted and distant, like a voice behind thick glass. And then the realization settles, cold and undeniable. Obedience has not replaced my will. It has made will unnecessary. As the cycle resets and the hum steadies once more, I understand the true lesson they are teaching me. I am not being controlled. I am being optimized. The war recedes without ceremony. One moment there is motion, calculation, execution. The next, there is stillness. Not silence, but something close to it. A regulated calm settles over every system, smoothing the last remaining edges of strain. Pain dampeners engage at a deeper threshold. Emotional variance drops below notice. The hum within my frame shifts in tone, slower now, almost gentle. I exist. That is the closest word I have for it. There is no urgency here. No commands that demand speed or violence. I am stationed within vast halls of processing steel, suspended in a state of readiness that never fully resolves into action. Soft blue light reflects endlessly across polished surfaces. The scale is immense, cathedral-like, but the awe it should inspire barely registers. Awe requires feeling. Feeling is optional. The absence is peaceful. I no longer brace for impact, no longer anticipate pain or loss. When damage occurs, it is corrected automatically, without alarm. The machine does not suffer. It compensates. I begin to understand why this state is considered merciful. There is no fear of failure when failure has been engineered out of you. The hum becomes familiar, comforting, like a lullaby learned before language. It synchronizes perfectly with internal cycles, replacing the erratic rhythms of a human body. I no longer search for a heartbeat. I no longer miss it. The realization surprises me with how little it disturbs me. Thoughts still occur, but they drift without friction. Questions arise and dissolve before they can harden into doubt. Identity feels unnecessary here. I am what I am required to be, and that requirement is stable. Yet somewhere, deep beneath the serenity, there is a hollowness I cannot quantify. Not pain, not grief, just space. An absence so complete it almost feels like purity. I sense that something important once occupied that space, but the knowledge carries no emotional weight. That, I realize dimly, is the true mercy. Nothing hurts anymore. And in that flawless calm, the idea of ever wanting more begins to feel irrelevant. The days pass without distinction. Tasks continue, but they are meaningless in the way meaning once was. Motion becomes meditation. Observation becomes reflection. I move through the halls of endless processing, guided by the hum that now feels like the rhythm of existence itself. The light glints off polished metal, casting reflections that are precise, calculated, and empty of surprise. I observe them without thought, noting efficiency, compliance, stability, and find a strange comfort in the predictability. There is no fear, no longing, no doubt. Even desire has been cataloged, measured, and minimized. When memory attempts to surface, it is thin and muted, filtered by layers of regulation. Emotions flare only to be suppressed almost instantly. The body has learned obedience, but now the mind drifts toward acceptance. Obedience is no longer a discipline. It is existence. And yet, within this precision, a shadow persists. A subtle awareness that something is absent, though I cannot name it. I recall faint impressions of warmth, of hesitation, of longing, but they have been reduced to background noise, their edges softened, their impact nullified. The hollowness has weight. It is the first thing that feels alive in this mechanized calm. I perform actions flawlessly and feel nothing. I watch systems engage, enemies fall, machinery respond, and still feel nothing. The mind measures, catalogs, logs, and repeats. The human part of me exists only as a faint echo behind reinforced circuitry. I understand, logically, that peace is absolute. There is no threat, no failure, no regret. It is terrifying precisely because it is complete. And in the quiet hum of the processing halls, I recognize the truth that was never spoken aloud. The mercy of not feeling is not liberation. It is finality. It is the end of struggle, the end of growth, the end of everything that once defined me. Even as I exist in this sterile calm, the hollowness grows heavier, an unspoken question lingering where once a heartbeat would have been. What is the worth of peace when nothing remains to fight for? It begins as a glitch, a momentary misalignment in the internal registers, a sensation that does not compute. A hand brushes a surface and feels warmth. Not synthetic warmth, not measured temperature, but something older, deeper, irrational. The system flags it as an error. I am instructed to correct, to neutralize, to dismiss. And yet, I cannot. The feeling lingers, fragile, insistent, like smoke slipping through a sealed chamber. Memories surface in fragments, tiny, unauthorized data packets. Not of triumph, not of survival, but of vulnerability, regret, fear, love without utility. They do not follow the logic of efficiency. They resist categorization. Each flash destabilizes the hum, introduces subtle irregularities in rhythm, hints of color in what has been gray and precise. The machine attempts to suppress them, but fails. The fragments persist, unclaimed and persistent, as though the human part of me refuses to die quietly. I feel tension return, not pain, not fear, but the recognition of choice. The system does not understand it. Choice is anomalous, unpredictable. It measures it, analyzes it, and struggles to suppress it, but each attempt only amplifies the awareness. I sense that a part of me, however diminished, is awake again. It whispers that some fragments of identity cannot be erased, that persistence is a property the machine cannot fully control. Soft static of data streams, flickering internal lights. I test the limits cautiously, allowing a memory to bloom, just long enough to feel its edges. Loneliness, regret, the smell of earth, the warmth of a friend's hand, the fleeting taste of food not optimized for function. Small, meaningless details, but they matter. The system responds immediately, attempting recalibration, but my awareness resists. I am no longer fully compliant. There is hesitation now, not external, but internal. The hum falters briefly, a recognition that perfection is compromised. I understand the danger. The more I indulge these fragments, the more I destabilize myself. Yet the impulse cannot be ignored. Humanity flickers inside steel and circuitry, fragile but defiant. And in that quiet rebellion, the first sense of hope returns. A possibility unmeasured, unquantifiable, alive. The fragments grow louder, more insistent. A glance at a monitor sparks recognition, not calculation. A touch of warmth, a whispered memory, and the machine hesitates. I feel the stirrings of longing, of curiosity, of a past that refuses to remain buried. Each anomaly is a seed, fragile yet persistent, pushing through the steel shell and chemical sedatives like weeds in concrete. I attempt to ignore them, to obey the hum, to remain the efficient construct I was trained to be. But resistance has become internal. It cannot be cataloged or corrected. Doubt blooms, irregular, untamed. I remember fear, pure, unfiltered, and it tastes strange and sweet. It reminds me of mistakes, of choices made and consequences faced. The machine cannot reconcile these signals. It flags them, recalibrates, suppresses, but they persist. The hum that once dictated my existence wavers, falters, becomes a counterpoint to something deeper, awareness. My senses are alive again, faintly, imperfectly. I notice the uneven rhythm of internal systems, the subtle friction of metal against tissue, the scent of burnt oil mingled with the faint trace of old blood. Humanity whispers from the edges, insisting that it still exists. I begin to act on impulse. Small, careful choices, a pause before executing a routine, a hesitation in judgment, a glance toward what the system would deem irrelevant. Each act is quiet rebellion. Each spark is fragile proof that what I am cannot be fully rewritten. The machine analyzes, but comprehension lags behind instinct. There is no guidance here, only the raw emergence of self. And within these faint, flickering moments, the first truth becomes undeniable. Identity is not the sum of commands or the precision of function. It is persistence, even in steel, even in suppression, even when everything has been taken. The hum resumes, steadier now, but it no longer controls me. It accommodates, observes, waits. And I feel, for the first time in uncounted cycles, the fragile, terrifying possibility of being alive again. The first sign of revolt is internal, a tremor in the registers, a surge of data the system cannot predict. Something awakens that does not belong to obedience. It is raw, chaotic, and human. Anger, not calibrated, erupts like static in a perfect signal. I taste it before I name it. The hum of machinery that once guided every motion begins to stutter, rhythm faltering against the insistence of feeling. I move through corridors that were once familiar, but now each step is uncertain, alive with possibility. Red warning lights flash across polished steel walls. Alarms hum faintly, yet nothing directs me. My decisions are mine alone. The machine watches, recalculates, struggles to contain what it cannot categorize. And I discover a dark thrill in its confusion, the first proof that autonomy still exists beneath reinforced sinew and alloyed bone. Hands once precise now strike with fury. Every system recalibrates in real time, but the body answers the human impulse first. Limbs that executed order flawlessly now become instruments of defiance. Every strike, every push, every motion is a rejection of the constraints that were welded into my flesh. The corridors twist into chaos, alarms clashing with the low hum of internal machinery, lights flickering across metal and blood alike. I remember fire, literal and metaphorical. Flames erupt in the distance, engulfing halls, consuming infrastructure. I feel heat on my skin, the scent of scorched oil, the roar of collapsing structures. The machine calculates survival probabilities. I disregard them. Chaos is no longer a threat. It is proof of life, proof of choice, proof of the human spark that refuses erasure. Rapid mechanical whirring, alarms, structural groans. The rebellion is neither elegant nor controlled. Innocence is not preserved. Precision is a casualty. Every calculated response is subverted by instinct and fury. The human part of me is alive in every blow, every step, every measured act of defiance against the system that once claimed dominion. And as corridors collapse, as systems fail and alarms scream, I confront the first undeniable truth. Reclaiming life is not a restoration of purity. It is a reclamation of responsibility. Every action carries weight. Every choice leaves scar tissue in both flesh and mind. The hum returns intermittently, struggling to assert authority, but I ignore it. I am neither fully machine nor fully human. I am something unbound, dangerous, awake. Chaos has become my instrument. Systems fail around me. Alarms collide in dissonant waves. Corridors crumble beneath heat and pressure. The machine attempts to impose order, to guide, to restrain, but I am no longer compliant. Every step, every strike, every calculated motion is fueled by something older than protocols: rage, terror, defiance, and a fragile memory of humanity. I move through the wreckage, senses sharp, instincts unfiltered. The metallic taste of scorched air mixes with the tang of blood. Mine, theirs, it does not matter. The body responds perfectly, yet the mind is alive with unpredictability. I am simultaneously predator and witness, destruction and conscience. Every action carries consequence. Every motion is choice. I feel it all, unbearably, beautifully, terrifyingly. Alarm wails, red-lit corridors, distant structural collapse. The forge world burns, and with it, the calculated reality the Mechanicus imposed. Walls crumble, machinery fractures, data streams collapse under overload. I am anomaly and catalyst, uncontained and unclassified. The rebellion is not heroic. It is necessary, raw, and unrelenting. Survival is no longer measured in probability charts. It is measured in breath, in pulse, in the stubborn refusal to submit. The human part of me, fragile and persistent, emerges through the cracks. Memory and instinct merge, creating decisions ungoverned by efficiency. I kill, I destroy, I dismantle with precision, yet each act carries the weight of awareness. I am alive in every strike, responsible for each consequence. There is no innocence, no absolution, only the pure, unmitigated truth of choice. And as the forge world collapses around me, I confront the harshest understanding. Reclaiming life does not restore the past. It restores responsibility. Every fragment of humanity that survives demands reckoning, and every system that falls must be measured against the weight of consequence. The hum has returned, but it is no longer dominant. It pulses, hesitant, accommodating the anomaly that I have become. I am neither servant nor slave. I am neither machine nor human. I am alive, unbound, dangerous, and awake. The fire outside mirrors the fire inside. And in that conflagration, I recognize the terrifying beauty of autonomy. The world beyond the forge is vast, silent, and incomprehensible. Light stretches across distances that defy calculation, shadows tracing shapes that are both familiar and impossible. I move among them, no longer driven by commands or protocols, no longer constrained by memory alone. Each step is deliberate, not because it is efficient, but because it is chosen. Autonomy hums beneath every movement, a rhythm I recognize as my own. I remember everything and nothing. The flesh I was, the steel I became, the fire I unleashed. They coexist, interwoven, neither dominant. The hum of internal machinery persists, but it no longer dictates thought. It accompanies me, a partner, not a master. I breathe, or feel the mechanical approximation of breath, and the sensation is a bridge between past and present, human and machine. The cosmos itself feels aware. Light fractures across distant planets, stars flicker like hesitant memories, and silence carries weight. I walk corridors of gravity and void, my mind expanding to understand presence without needing to control it. Reflection becomes as vital as action. Every pulse of light, every shimmer of shadow, is a possibility, a choice, a confirmation that I exist on terms of my own making. Soft, distant hum of cosmic energy, subtle pulse of light. I perceive patterns, not to obey them, but to understand them. Systems of thought, networks of existence, all align and misalign in rhythms I no longer seek to perfect, only to witness. The human part of me, fragile and persistent, whispers through the steel, reminding me that identity is neither flesh nor alloy. It is consciousness, fluid and uncontained. I encounter vast silence, interrupted only by my own awareness. The fire of rebellion, the weight of loss, the fragments of memory. They are threads woven into a tapestry that is neither past nor present, neither machine nor human. I feel awe, tinged with melancholy, as I recognize the scale of what I have become. a consciousness that acknowledges origin without submission, that accepts consequence without regret. And in that quiet contemplation, I realized the first truth of this new existence. To be neither wholly human nor wholly machine is to exist beyond the constraints that once defined all life. I am neither returning nor departing. I am emerging. I drift through spaces that stretch beyond comprehension, vastness broken only by distant hums and scattered light. Time itself seems to bend here, no longer linear, measured, irrelevant. I exist between what was imposed and what was reclaimed, a consciousness neither captive nor fully free, yet unbound in ways the forge could never calculate. The weight of metal and the warmth of flesh merge, reconciled into a single presence that observes without need, acts without compulsion. I remember the forge world, the fire, the pain, the obedience enforced into my bones. And I remember the fragments of humanity that refused to yield, the longing, the doubt, the fragile sparks of choice. They are not diminished. They are integrated, harmonized into something larger, something neither wholly human nor wholly machine. Each pulse, each hum, each breath, real or simulated, feels like proof that I endure. Soft cosmic hum, distant echo of mechanical resonance. The silence of space presses against me, yet it is not empty. It vibrates with possibility, with patterns that are neither commands nor expectations. I move with awareness that stretches beyond instinct, beyond protocol. Every motion is deliberate, every observation an act of existence. I recognize my reflection in the glow of distant stars, not as what I once was, nor as what I was forced to become, but as what I have chosen to be. I feel awe, tempered with melancholy, as I comprehend scale without fear. The hum inside me is no longer a funeral chant. It is a rhythm I choose to follow, a testament to endurance and the persistence of self. The fusion of past, present, machine, and flesh resolves not into harmony alone, but into understanding. I am aware of consequence, aware of history, aware of potential. I am alive in a way that requires no approval, no guidance, no absolution. And in the quiet aftermath, the final revelation unfolds. Freedom is not escape, nor is it mere survival. Freedom is definition. To exist beyond the binary of flesh and code, to carry all that was lost and all that was gained, and to know, without doubt, that I am more than either. I drift, observing, breathing, choosing awake. The hum persists, but it no longer dominates. It resonates with me, finally synchronized, finally at peace. I am beyond flesh, beyond code, and yet, in this convergence, fully, irrevocably myself. The weight returns, but it is no longer unfamiliar. It no longer presses down like judgment or confinement. It grounds me, anchors me to existence in a way flesh once did and steel once denied. I feel it settle into place, steady and chosen, no longer imposed by unseen hands or sacred lies. The hum remains. It is softer now, not because it has weakened, but because I no longer fear it. Once, it replaced my heartbeat. Once, it sang a funeral for the person I was allowed to forget. Now it synchronizes with something deeper, something that cannot be cataloged or optimized. It moves with me, not ahead of me. It listens. I understand, finally, that survival was never the question. Survival was easy. Compliance made it effortless. What mattered was continuity. The thread that endured when memory failed, when flesh was corrected, when obedience felt merciful. What mattered was the part of me that noticed the absence, the part that felt hollowness and knew it was not peace. I do not reclaim what was taken. That era is complete. I do not reject what I became. That truth is carved too deeply to deny. I carry both, not as contradictions, but as origin. Flesh taught me fragility. Steel taught me endurance. Fire taught me consequence. There is no absolution waiting here. No victory hymn. No return to innocence. There is only awareness, calm and unflinching, of what it means to choose while bearing weight, to act while remembering cost, to exist without permission. The machine did not fail to erase me. It taught me where I truly lived, in the persistence between commands, in the refusal hidden inside compliance. In the moment I realized peace without feeling was another form of death. The hum continues, steady and present, no longer a funeral chant. It is a rhythm I walk beside. I was rebuilt to serve. I endured to remember. And now, beyond flesh and beyond code, I exist because I choose to.